They say time heals all things, but in Cameroon, time stopped healing long ago. It froze somewhere between fear and fatigue, somewhere between the anthem and the echo. Every dawn feels the same. The flag rises, the streets wake, the soldiers salute. And one name keeps echoing through the halls of power, Paul Biya. He's not just a man anymore. He's a calendar that never changes. 43 years of handshakes, parades, and promises. 43 years of the same smile, staring down a generation that never chose him. When Biya first came to power, disco lights still flashed across the world. Cold War borders split continents, and the Berlin Wall was still standing tall. He was young, educated, polished, a promise dressed in a French suit. Cameroon believed it had found its bridge between past and future. Ahijo stepped aside, and the nation clapped. The peaceful handover was hailed as a miracle on African soil. But miracles can rot when power tastes too sweet. What began as leadership slowly hardened into rule. Years turned into decades, and the presidency became a throne. Ministers changed, governments fell, but the chair never moved. In the palaces of Yaoundé, loyalty replaced merit. And silence became the language of survival. To stay close to power, you learned to nod, not to speak. Every whisper had ears, every question had a price. The young learned early that ambition can be dangerous. And journalists learned that truth could vanish overnight. France watched quietly, smiling behind closed doors. Old colonial strings never truly snap, they stretch. As long as Biya stayed friendly, the deals kept flowing. Oil, timber, and influence, all wrapped in polite diplomacy. And so the system fed itself. A few at the top ate like kings, the rest learned to survive on stories. Cameroon became a classroom of patience, where people mastered the art of endurance. They said Biya was wise, they said he brought stability. But stability without growth is just motion without movement. Behind the glitter of official ceremonies, schools crumbled, hospitals begged for medicine, and youth unemployment climbed higher than Mount Cameroon. Then came the whispers, he's too old. But power doesn't retire, it reproduces itself through those who guard it. The ministers, the generals, the advisors. They built a wall around him, thick with fear and ambition. They protected him, yes, but they also protected themselves. Soon the man became myth. He spoke rarely, appeared occasionally. Yet his image filled every billboard and classroom. When he did speak, it was through carefully written words. Never a conversation, always a declaration. People began to joke, softly only in safe places. They said Cameroon had 2 seasons, dry, rainy, and Biya. They said the country was like an old television, same channel, no remote. But jokes cannot hide pain, they only keep it breathable. In the Anglophone regions, frustration brewed louder than anywhere else. Years of neglect, of feeling unheard, boiled over into protests that met bullets instead of dialogue. Villages burned, families scattered. And a nation that once called itself united began to bleed from within. Still, the television smiled. Official news said peace was returning, that terrorists were being handled, that the president was concerned and in control. But who believes in concern when your town is smoke? Who believes in peace when your brother disappears? The people learned to live 2 realities. One on the screen, one in the streets. And through it all, Biya stayed distant. Sometimes in Switzerland for medical rest. Sometimes in Yaoundé behind guarded gates. To see him was to see a ghost dressed in authority. Yet every election came like a ceremony of déjà vu. Posters, rallies, fireworks, counting results. And then the same announcement, Paul Biya has won. In 2025, it happened again. 92 years old, another victory speech read on his behalf. 53%, the council declared. People didn't shout, they sighed. Because surprise requires expectation, and Cameroon had none left. Some called it stability, others called it surrender. Either way, the silence was louder than any protest. Those who dared to challenge found their roads suddenly narrow. Permits revoked, airtime cut, sometimes lives threatened. Fear became the invisible currency of politics. Everyone spent it, but no one admitted to having it. Still, a few brave souls tried to dream. Students painted slogans in secret, pastors preached courage in whispers. Musicians laced resistance between love lyrics. And exiles used the internet as their new megaphone. The government called them rebels, the people called them hope. Because hope in a country like Cameroon is not a thing you hold, it's a thing you hide until it's safe to show. But hope is a stubborn flame. You can bury it under fear, starve it with lies, drown it in poverty. Yet somehow it keeps flickering back to life. In the small cafes of Douala, conversations start slow. Someone checks the door before they speak, then says, "Do you think he even knows what's happening anymore?" Another shrugs. Because how can one man, nearly a century old, still carry the weight of 26 million dreams? They say he hardly appears in public. Some say he's too tired, others say he's being controlled. The truth sits somewhere in the shadows between those whispers. Maybe he just became a symbol, a living logo of continuity for those who profit from his throne. And those who benefit guard that symbol like treasure. They own the airwaves, the contracts, the gates to opportunity. To question them is to question survival. So people stopped asking why and started asking how long. Power is like perfume. The longer you wear it, the less you smell it. Around Biya, the scent of control became normal. Ministers bowed, police obeyed. And every decision echoed one name even when it wasn't spoken. Meanwhile, the young watched the clock. Their parents had grown old under the same face. They wanted passports, not promises. Each plane leaving Yaoundé carried another dream in exile. A doctor, a coder, a singer, a teacher. Brain Drain became the new national anthem. France kept smiling, signing deals in quiet rooms. Aid, security training, oil rights. A neat partnership dressed as friendship. Cameroon stayed stable, and Paris stayed comfortable. The cost was democracy, but who counts that when profit's involved? And then came technology. Phones became weapons of truth. Videos leaked, protests, arrests, soldiers burning villages. For the first time, the world saw what Cameroonians had whispered for years. But even then, the silence at the top stayed iron-thick. In palaces built on patience, even pain becomes protocol. You cry in private, smile in public, and call it peace. That's how nations forget themselves, one small compromise at a time. They packaged Biya like a myth who never ages. Every year, his birthday photos looked recycled. Every speech sounded familiar. Every promise felt like déjà vu. When leaders outlive their message, their countries start living their mistakes. And Cameroon began to mirror its ruler. Old in leadership, young in population, tired in hope. A land rich in soil but poor in trust. A country of beauty held hostage by comfort and fear. Still, the people endure. Markets open, music plays, weddings bloom. Life insists on living, even under weight. Because ordinary Cameroonians have mastered grace under pressure. They laugh through tears, build through disappointment, and keep believing that one day, the sunrise will belong to them again. When 2025 came, they knew the script. Posters of Biya, slogans of progress, cheers from loyalists. Opposition voices muffled behind regulations. When the council announced his win, there were no fireworks, just quiet acceptance. Some called it respect, others called it exhaustion. Yet somewhere inside that silence, a question began to echo louder than before. What happens after him? Because time waits for no one, not even power. The day will come when the chair is empty. And when it does, what will be left? A system that serves people, or people trained only to serve the system. Cameroon stands at that crossroad now, pretending not to see it, afraid to imagine it. But imagination is the first step to freedom. Once people start picturing life beyond the throne, no wall of fear can hold forever. You can't silence time. You can delay it, distract it, decorate it. But one day the clock strikes truth. If power becomes eternal, is it still leadership, or just captivity in disguise? Would you call this loyalty, fear, or national silence?